On September 11th, I remember going to school. I was in 4th grade, and I remember everybody just sitting. We started our math lesson, and then my principal came in, and she said something to my teacher, and then she walked out of the room. And my teacher then turned on the TV, and then just kind of talked about how we were going to talk about history today. And we watched the actual live footage of the Twin Towers.
So my mom was calling me because she's a teacher at school, so she knew what was going on. And she's like, hey, don't turn on the news because this is happening, and I'm worried about you being home alone and stuff. So it was a little too late for me. So obviously, first thing I do as a child is, oh, well, I'm going to go check this out. And I see it. I actually remember, my vivid memory is sitting up in the bed and seeing the towers fall live. And that was just like one of those surreal moments.
On the day that 9/11 occurred, I was actually in Italy. My dad was in the military, so we were stationed in Aviano. And I remember my sister and I were watching SpongeBob SquarePants, and everything cut out, and all of a sudden we just saw this radio program, and buildings smoking, and planes crashing, and I just remember screaming for my mom, Mom, what's going on? And when she saw it, she covered our faces and made us go into the other room, and she called my dad. And the whole air base had been shut down. Everything was awful, but of course we were so little that we really didn't remember anything.
I learned about it because my mom was working in the cafeteria, and it was Grandparents' Day at my elementary school. And basically my mom came out after listening to the radio in the cafeteria, and she told my dad. My dad didn't think she was telling the truth. He was like, you got your news wrong, basically. But then I went to a Catholic school, and the priest got on the microphone in the gymnasium and said that the Twin Towers had been struck.
I remember back in those days I would get an email update from CNN, and right before I went into class at 8:30 there was an update saying that a plane had hit the Twin Towers, and I thought, oh, it was like a private plane. And when I came out, I found out that it wasn't, that it was much more serious.
I was actually in 3rd grade, and I was sitting in class learning about math until they interrupted us in the math lesson, which I was like, yes. And then they told us that the Twin Towers fell, and I didn't really feel anything at the time because I didn't know how important it was. I just knew some buildings fell down. But after I went home, talked to my parents for a little bit, I kind of cried. Yes, I cried. But I just found out how serious it was, and it's still kind of serious to me now because I found out I had relatives that was in that building.
And what I remember about 9/11 10 years ago was more just like the shock of it.
When I first saw the images, couldn't really believe what I was seeing. All I saw was just some of the people falling from the skies, and then a bunch of firefighters and everything. It just really struck me as being a really horrible thing.
We moved into the house that day. The first thing that was installed in the house was the TV. So all day that TV ran on several different news channels as the day progressed. And then later on through that day as well, Air Force One was the only plane flying after the attacks, and it flew right above our heads as we all stood and stared as the president flew above us, and off several miles away was several fighter jets also flying with them as well.
Unbelievable, really. I mean, something like this happening. And then I do remember some anger because I don't know who was behind it or what for like a long time.
On September 11th, 2001, I was actually in 6th grade history class, and our teacher, when we found out what happened, got really upset, visibly and emotionally upset. And all of us were thinking that she had a family member or her husband or someone that she knew in the towers or in the airplane, but she told us days later that no, she was just upset that our country was attacked. And I guess as 6th graders, it was hard for us to grasp the concept of being upset about something outside of our own local communities.
Me and my aunt thought it was like a trick or something. We were like, no, this is a joke. This is a joke. Until like we realized it's actual news, because we kept changing the channels and it was like on every channel. And then I just went to school and we had like moments of silence. We didn't really do anything at school at all, honestly. We just talked about what was happening. And I was in, I think, 3rd grade when all this was happening.
My dad was crying on the couch, and when I asked him what was wrong, all he could tell me was that, Chelsea, there are some bad people in this world.
I still to this day have my diary entry from when I was watching the news and I was writing about things that were happening as it was going on.
At first I thought they said it was the World Trade Centers, and I thought, well, what was the big deal about trains? But later I then realized as I grew up about how important the two towers were to the world and to the United States.
Kind of made me sad because I remember I have an uncle at the time was working in the Pentagon who got out. So it was kind of scary.
We had a day of silence at school, which I was kind of crying because one of my friends had lost a relative there, so it was really a tragic moment.
And then also, I'm from Ohio. I live north of Dayton, really close to their Air Force Base, right, Patterson Air Force Base. And it was just crazy to see how just the norm went out the door, and all of a sudden you see these all kinds of aircrafts flying out everywhere. They're on lockdown mode, and it was just a really surreal moment when that happened.
But just as sixth graders, we didn't have that national pride or that understanding of global issues and the effect that it would have on our country. But after that day, we did.
I was in middle school and I woke up and my mother, the first thing she said was, "We just went to war." Being overseas, I think it made a difference because it didn't just impact the United States, it impacted the whole world. People that weren't even involved in the attack in Italy were just horror-struck that something would happen to a country like that. So it's just one of those things where you wish it didn't happen, and you just have to pray for those people and remember the day and all those that passed away then.
And everybody was telling me, oh, you're going to remember this moment and remember what this was like. And when you're grown up, this is the moment that's going to define your generation and where you were and who you were with. And so that's just really what I remember from it. And personally, I didn't know anyone in New York or know anyone who was personally affected, but I heard so many stories that being in the classroom and being in a learning environment and having that happen just really reminded me that no one is really far away from those kinds of things happening and from those experiences, and that we all are connected to someone who is involved.